a more specific topic since Benny's a return guest, which is nice because that means if you haven't heard the episode, there's a whole episode where we got to know BennyFits. But tonight we're going to take another step in kind of just discussing the things that we talk about, particularly the whole content creation, streaming, gaming side of things. And so, Benny, welcome, dude. Welcome back, by the way.
Man, it's always good to talk to you.
Thank you. I love the conversations, man.
I will say, since I've started, and streaming or content creation in general, I guess, it is a very stressful and nasal gazing. I don't know how you do that. Navel gazing kind of enterprise, because you spend a lot of time thinking, okay, if you're doing it right, you spend a lot of time thinking, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
If you're thinking right. But you're a guy, every time I've met with you personally, every time I've had a conversation with you, you're a stabilizing influence, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you, man. I really do appreciate that. I've always loved our talks. I think every time I walk away from one of our conversations, I always feel great about kind of where we're at in terms of our, because we have very different, I would say, trajectories in the space. You have more experience. You've gone down this particular path. I've gone down a different one. But whenever I walk away from our conversations, I always feel like, I get this guy and he gets me, and I really appreciate that about you, Benny. So thank you, man.
Yeah, and it's not just okay. I found that this is an interesting thing about being in this space, is that the people that I've run into, there are a lot of people that I've run into that I only talk to them occasionally, but every time I talk to them, it's like you can tell, like, there's no love lost. We were always fast friends, and it's easy to pick up a conversation. You're one of those guys. I don't mind dropping some names like Avalon Star, Mr. Nearest, Nick Regis from used to do the Destiny infographics. That's just a bunch of guys like that. When I haven't talked to you in like 6 months, but I'm about to start a conversation, and you're going to drop in like we'd never stopped talking.
I share that feeling, man.
That it's good to have those kinds of people.
It's
when you can find them.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's far and few between. So Thank you, man. That means a lot to me. It means a lot. Let's you got some things weighing on your mind, and I think this is a good place to kind of dive in and kind of discuss and share some thoughts about it. So what's been on your mind, Benny? What's been going on?
Let me kind of start with where a lot of this originates from. Like, before I even get into like what it is, I actually tweeted this out this week. I think I tweeted out that that what I do is sort of like in the intersection of live stream, on camera, and VTuber. So what I'm doing is relatively unique. I'm not the only one doing it, and thank God I'm not. And I encourage anybody that wants to try it too. That means that I'm also catering to a very specific audience.
Yeah.
And I have to really kind of, I put on this persona, I guess, and I put on a personality. And oftentimes I look back at what I'm doing, as I had this week, and I think to myself, okay, what's going on in this space? And is this space appropriate for me anymore? I think I may have had this conversation with you before, because I know I reach out to people a lot just to see, like, I don't literally say this, but my intent is, like, I want to see what you think. Am I reading the tea leaves properly here?
Right.
Like, I look and I think to myself, or I'll ask the question, like, hey, this thing is going on, and that concerns me, and I worry that maybe this space has become too adult or too concerned with a specific thing, and that perhaps that means that my content is really not made for the space anymore. And that's kind of what's happening to me right now. Is I'm kind of going through that phase. I don't believe it's not a place for me right now, but it what kind of led to this realization that I've been having, that the space, and this is not a fresh thing. This is not a new thing. This has been going on for a while. Really is in this space where, in content creation in general, not just streaming, where we got to grab every negative nugget we can find and just squeeze it to try to get as many people as we can to watch us. If you go to YouTube, you'll find just a ton of creators that are doing the like, oh, what killed this game? What happened to this game? Sort of thing. And I kind of fell into a rabbit hole watching these things.
Oh no.
To the point, and like not in like a, oh man, this guy's totally right, but kind of watching them going, oh,
just seeing it.
Where did this game go? I don't remember what happened to this.
Right.
And I started noticing like this trend where it's like a lot of this is presented in a way that it's not like you knew something. It's that you had some particular problem with this, or you saw something you didn't like, and that is going to become the entire content of your thesis. And I feel like, man, we simplify things way too much like that. And that sort of thing is like, okay, well, how do you grow when that is the thread that follows through everything?
Right.
You know, how do you grow without doing that, without falling into that trap?
When you see it everywhere, it begins to make you wonder, how am I able to like navigate this and not fall into this same pattern?
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, is this what people are actually looking for? Best example. Very recently, the game, I got to think about what the name of this game is called. The Day Before. That's where this thread, like this worm, started in my head. Where I really started, because I noticed that the moment there was a problem, and it looked like they weren't going to release this game, the moment they had problems with the IP, it just exploded. The number of videos that came out, like, and the number of guys that would like that, it became the only thing they covered for like weeks, you know, and to the point that they have like a every 3 weeks I do a video on The Day Before or the day after. What, you know,
The Day Before. Game. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, good. Jeez.
Yeah, that's what I recall the name.
Lose all my gamer cred for not knowing.
Yeah, no, I recall this one.
And it's like, you know, I have no love for The Day Before. I have no dog in this fight, but sheesh. I mean, like, okay, so it's not coming out, you know, like right now, and maybe ever. Do you have anything else to say? You know, like, that's. Yeah, I'm getting exhausted. Just
so my feel from this is, or my read on this is, you know, there's this underlying cynicism when there's
the perfect word.
Yeah, when there's big news for most games, there's often a response that's like, oh yeah, you know, of course it's not coming out. Here's the reason why. Here's why it's doomed to fail, or here's why it failed, etc., etc. Yeah. And I see that, actually. I see that too. And you know this well, because I'm going to use an example that you probably would be very familiar with, is the Destiny 2 community, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so very similar. There's some very similar sentiments out there when certain things go wrong in the community or certain things happen. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Destiny. There's often a lot of people who have a lot of things to say, have a lot of criticisms, but like I said, kind of like that cynical outlook on things.
I think it's even worse than just a lot of people have that though. It's more that there are people that like that's their whole thing. My whole shtick is just to tell you like this is the thing that's going to kill it. This
Right.
is the thing that's going to kill it.
Right.
And it's like, man, like what are you contributing to the conversation, really?
Getting to the heart of your thought, and the concern is that people are making that
it's their identity.
Like it's their identity. It's the core of their content. Like someone who has a vast amount of cynical things or incredibly critical things without being productive, right? To say about XYZ, whether it's about a game, you know, another case in point, not to say that I think they're like Twitch itself, right? There's a lot of people who will hate on Twitch all day, even though they're heavy users of the platform. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things Twitch can fix. There's a lot of things
Twitch has to answer to, but you can't, I mean.
But I know people in the community that's a big part of their identity is I'm going to crap on Twitch all day, even though I'm a streamer on it.
And I think like okay. So there was a thing I used to say about the internet. And I'm like for decades, not decades, but like for like the better part of a decade, I've been thinking this, and that is the internet is incredibly binary.
It is.
If you held up both your hands, at somebody on the internet, and then put down one finger, oh man, you just raised both your fists at me. Like, I mean, because like there's not a state between those two. It's like, oh, geez, man, I'm getting a little fired up.
I think it's the thing about the internet, though, right? Like, often the loudest voices are usually the angriest ones.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it creates this, in my opinion,
an easy emotion to invoke in people, too.
True. In my mind, when I see that, I think it's just because it's really, like you said, it's easy, but also like, when you're stoked about something, when you're happy or you're really great, like you're feeling good about something, you're less likely to yell about it on the internet or even just like share it. I think there's that immediate response when something upsets you or angers you, or you think is, that gets you riled up. I think intrinsically we're all really motivated to yell about it. And the internet's where we'll go to do it. And then there's this kind of like almost immediate reaction that we have to immediately go do it. And that's, in my opinion, what contributes so much to why we see this more or why we see this often on the internet. Right. And so social media, etc. But yeah.
So an acting coach I once, or I guess coach is not the right term, actually acting instructor I once had, told me, he said, people like to be offended. You may not think that, but people like to be offended. They like to be upset. They like outrage because it just really fires them up, and they feel like they have something they can now do. He was explaining this into like why he felt like Shakespeare actually did very well, because a lot of Shakespeare is relatively offensive to the sensibilities. So, but I think it applies here. I think it applies in this situation. People really they just enjoy being angry, and no fault to anybody that's actually, that's actually engaging that machine. I think the thing that's really just kind of gotten under my skin is there comes a point where the saturation is so high that that's all you see, even though there's more. I know there's more out there.
Right.
I know that there's more out there. And I'm trying to remember if it was philosophy or ethics professor. He wasn't my professor, but I know he taught he was a theology guy that taught one of those, like his focus was one of those things. But I told him I was going into computers, and he said, well, are you going to be working on the internet? And he said, well, I said, yes. Well, here's the problem I have with technology. I don't think that it's necessarily enriching our lives unless we're using it with wisdom and guidance. And that became like that thought, just hearing him say that has stuck in my head for a long time. And the more I think about this sort of thing, I think like, yeah, this is the kind of situation he was talking about.
Yeah.
well, I mean, we're talking about video games, but it's kind of everything.
Gaming, content creation space. You see a lot of that. I see what I've seen what you're seeing, and I guess my question to you is: do you feel like you're noticing it more lately?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
well, for sure. Especially in this space. There is and I know I've brought this up to you before. Because I've privately brought it up to a lot of people. There is this real big push to say AAA gaming is dying, and that is one of the places I've really noticed it, because I've noticed like some of the creators that I've like, I like how you review things. I like how you see things. Now I'm noticing that's kind of their whole thing is like their tentpole is, this is why AAA gaming is dying. I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, but I guess like. I mean, I guess that Diablo 4, Street Fighter, Elden Ring, Resident Evil 4, I had like a list of these games. Like, I guess if all of those games fail, I'll believe you. But if it's just Redfall, I don't know that I agree.
Right.
Like.
Well, and a case in point, like the whole Redfall debacle, right? Like for those that don't know, Redfall was this AAA game that had some hype around it, and then when it dropped, there was a lot of issues with it and a lot of disappointment. And then, I mean, that's the short version of it. There's a lot of reasons that, like,
for the record, my position on Redfall is it's fine. It's fine, and that's the problem. Like it could have been. People wanted it to be better, and it wasn't better. So now it's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Now it's horrible, right? But
until Gollum came out, then now Gollum is the worst thing that's ever happened.
I was going to say, like, Gollum's the latest. Gollum's the latest thing, right? But then you get this reaction from people in the industry who will, comment on this and say, like you just said, maybe there's people saying this is why AAA games are going to fail, right? Et cetera, which is so funny because, flying in the face of things like Diablo, right?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to look and see, like, what is the top game right now? Because I'm almost certain it's going to be Diablo 4.
It's going to be Diablo 4, even before it's officially released. Right. And so I think for me, my perspective on this, and I know it might not even be helpful in this situation, but I do feel like because we're in an age where it's really easy to put your opinion out there. Super easy to just say, I hate this game and here's why. It makes it really easy to find those people saying those things. And are they right? I mean, and I know that's not the question, right? That to be very specific, I know that's not the question, but that's the lens at which I look at those things through, even though it might be taking over my feed, even though it might be all the top videos trending on YouTube for a given game or taking over my Twitter feed or whatever. I may see all those things, and then I stop and I ask myself, but is it really the end of AAA games in this particular example? Or is Twitch going to die tomorrow? Right? Like, like all these other things people will say. And I guess maybe this is a result of my annoyingly positive outlook on things. Yeah. But when I look at those comments, I stop and I maybe, like, if they have if it's a video, I stop and I'll watch part of it and go, okay, or the whole thing. And you're like, okay, these are their points. I don't agree, or I do agree. But I think that's the thing, is because people are making this like the core of their content. That's the part that makes us question, right? Like, is this the thing? Is this a direction everyone's going in?
Right. And that's, I think, when you said, like, your intent is to always look relatively positive at things. And I'm kind of the same way. I mean, no, I'm definitely the same way. Like there are games that somebody might bring up, and I'd be like, I'm never going to play that. That's just because I know I'm not going to like it. There's been only one game I have played in over 7 years of streaming that I've come off on the other side and said that was terrible. I will never play that game again.
Yeah,
and I won't tell you what it is because it doesn't really matter.
No, doesn't matter.
I mean, the problem is okay. So gaming in words said the problem is gaming media doesn't always paint an accurate picture too, though. I think that's true. I read that and immediately there was a thought I had because I've brought this up with somebody else too. Or maybe this is just one of those conversations I had with myself, like argue. You ever do that? You ever just like sit and go like, what is that? Like, can I justify this position? And then just like,
yeah, I check myself.
I'm like, is this the point at which I find out that I'm actually like crazy?
I've had those moments.
Because the one recently for me was like, does the cost of something matter when what I'm really trying to find out is what do I think of the substance of it?
Yeah.
You know, and I think for me, no. I think like there are people for sure where it's like, I know I'm giving you consumer advice, you know,
right?
And if that's the case, then yeah, you definitely need to consider about you need to worry about the money, the cost of something. But no, for me, I just really want to know, is there something in here that I find redeeming that I like? To bring it back to Redfall and Gollum, both of those games, I found things I liked. I found things that I found redeeming and I liked. I have 18 hours in Redfall. I streamed like 4 of those. You know, so like to make that as what you will, I played 14 more hours of that than I actually needed to. And I came away thinking, this needs work, but it's not terrible.
Right.
I'm kind of the same way with Gollum. I'm just like, it's adequate. You know, like I refer to Redfall as woefully adequate, and I think I would say the same thing about Gollum. I think I'd actually say more about Gollum, but put that in perspective. Let's put that in perspective. Okay. Let me just focus on Redfall for a second. Redfall was called the worst game of the year when it came out. It was not even the worst reviewed game on Metacritic. Not even the worst reviewed AAA game on Metacritic. There were like 2 other games that were way lower, which is like, well, how objective are we being then? I'm not saying that like, hey, this got a bad review and we shouldn't point out that it got a bad review, but are you just engaging in hyperbole to make your voice seem a little bit louder?
I think that's what it is, honestly. If I'm to like put a label on it, I think it's creators going for those clicks and views, and there's hyperbole there. I mean, it's often
I just can't be that guy.
Yeah,
just can't be him.
I think that's what ends up driving some of this content that we see, and because we know that if we act to that degree, embellishing or just kind of pushing more in one direction or the other than we maybe really think, it attracts those views, or it gives people that incentive to say, you know what, that's interesting. Someone has a title that says worst game of the year. I'm going to click this video and see what it's about.
Wow. Well, you know, and I'm not, because there's another thing that I've seen, but the trouble is, I know if I mention it, it's just going to drive people. You'll go looking for this thing, and you'll find like two or three people that use this terminology, and you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. I know of 2. Okay, I know 2 creators that have used the term that I'm thinking of, and I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it, but I have seen. I respect both of these guys. I just feel like, this is an example of where you've done this, and I'm not okay with it.
It's me, isn't it? I'm one of those guys. It's me twice.
No. These are much smaller guys than you. I mean, they only get like 1 million views per video or something. I mean,
absolutely
much smaller than you. No, I mean, it was just. I guess the trouble that I'm having, the neuroses that I'm experiencing, is seeing people like this that I'm like, I've seen you go deep into something and really read into it and really, explain to me what it's like to play this game in a way that your video doesn't quite communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And then to see you like just go ham on something that probably didn't need this level of critique because you knew that it was going to get a lot of views
Mm-hmm.
saddens me a little bit. It makes me feel a little like maybe I'm in the wrong place, like maybe I'm not.
Is that what do you strongly feel that way? Like questioning your place in this industry?
I'm always doing that.
Right.
And I would not say that I do that to a degree that I feel is unhealthy. I do that to a degree that I'm looking to see.
You want to self-check. You want to you want to make sure.
Am I protecting myself?
Right.
By coming up with this, by thinking about this. Am I?
Yeah.
Is there a way that I can improve? Is there a way that I can counteract this?
Mm-hmm.
In my own little space.
Mm-hmm.
And it does drive me to be a little more positive. Because I think that when I described this to you, I said, I'm actually going to look up what I actually said.
Yeah.
How we as content creators use our content to enrich the lives of others. I think that every content creator should be looking at their content in that way. They should be looking at your content with that eye. Like, what am I contributing that when somebody walks away from this, they go, I was informed, I was entertained, I came away from this better.
Right.
And I don't always feel like I'm achieving that goal, but that is the goal I set for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we should all think about with ourselves is when I've created a piece of content, did I achieve the goal? If I didn't, there's no point in being mad at myself. There's no point in punishing myself for that. That's not productive. What's productive is to make sure that the next time I do, I put the effort in to make sure that like what is coming through here is my legitimate feeling about the thing that I'm doing. This is the I'm reaching for that goal that I set for myself. And to that end, the people that do this, the people that are a little more cynical, I have no judgment for you. I genuinely, I'm not saying you're doing something for the sake of this. I'm saying that's the way it feels to me, and that is the effect it has on me. Simply because like I don't know what's going on in your head, and I know this is a cutthroat space.
It is.
It's not a zero sum game, but it is a cutthroat space. I guess this is really just more and more and BennyFits therapy more than anything. I'm just sort of like voicing this is a concern I have. How am I going to act and make myself better?
Yeah.
How am I going to use this to drive me to do something different? Because, well, the most famous guy to do this was literally called cynical. I mean, he called himself the cynical Brit, though I would dare say, I believe that Total Biscuit was a skeptic, not a cynic.
I think that's more accurate.
I'm all for a skeptic.
Yeah.
Like, feel free to be skeptical, but you don't have to like project something onto something when you don't know for sure. And I think that's the difference.
I've had many cynical people in my life, especially like family and friends and things like that.
Oh, and they can be the worst.
Those are kind of the worst, and those are the ones that maybe for better or for worse have shaped my personality in certain ways, because I definitely am, I think like you in the I notice it very easily. And I'm almost not hypersensitive, but like I'm sensitive to it in that I recognize when people are being cynical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my instinct is always to be like, well, it doesn't have to be this way, right? We don't have to look at it this way. Like, but looking at it through the lens of like the greater gaming community or even the content creation space, it is definitely something that, like you, I've noticed a lot of.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people being very critical of certain things, whether it's justified or not. And even if it's justified, I think my stance has always been, when people complain about things like that, like say Redfall or Gollum or Destiny 2, because I play a lot of Destiny 2. My response is generally like, well, then what would make it better? What's a realistic solution to make
and
this
comprehensive too?
Right.
Because like the simple, we always look at something and try to find the simplest cause and then the simplest solution, and it's never that way.
Right.
It's never so simple.
No.
You know, my fear is that that by projecting this, that I'm just putting a lot of negativity out in the world. But my intent is not that. My intent is just I don't want that to be all we are. You know, like I don't want that to be the thing that that this space is. That content creation, not just games, but content creation in general, is a place to snipe. Because I don't think it has to be. I enjoy this space. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy it's specifically games. I freaking love video games. I love computer games. I want them to be enjoyed. I want others to find that joy in them. I don't really want to feel like everything has got to be just the greatest experience you've ever had. Sometimes it just let it be the experience, man.
Yeah.
Just let it be the experience.
So how does this affect your content and approach going forward then?
I covered Redfall. I reached out to Daedalus about Gollum, and I have Gollum.
Mm-hmm.
I will cover Gollum, and I've generally been very. When I covered Redfall, I talked about all the things I liked. I did poke a little fun at the AI. I called it Ain't instead of AI. But I mean, because yeah, this is clearly like this is clearly kind of half baked, but
yeah.
But I think that above all, my goal will be to find my fun. Yeah. I will find my fun in whatever I'm doing, regardless of what that is, and let that serve as like, this is what my meter stick is going to be for the future. I won't let anybody else tell me, oh, this is the death of gaming. This is the death of AAA, AA, indie gaming. As much as people like to say, it's like AAA and AA, they're dying. Indie is the future. I've played way more bad.
Man, you know, even if I see those titles, or I hear that or see it on my feed, I'm at that point now where I mean, fundamentally, I don't believe it, and so I guess I just don't even engage with those things, and maybe that's part of how I navigate that personally.
I think that's also part of my problem, is that I'm not curating. You know, like I'm not curating my experience the way I ought to. But I also kind of like, okay, so it's kind of like, how do you define art? Right. Is Beethoven's Fifth, is that art? Is when the Philharmonic plays it. Insert location Philharmonic. When they play it, is that great? Is that art? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What about when a third grader plays it on his tuba? Is that still art? Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's just not as good as the Philharmonic.
Yeah.
But you can't not call it art. You can't. And by God, good on that kid for trying. You know, like I hope he keeps doing it.
Yeah.
So like the same with with all of this. You know, like
the same with these takes on the internet.
Yeah, like so, and the content they're referencing.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, they can't all be winners, but I'm glad you tried. I'm glad, because you know, I don't know if you've ever, you're in game dev. Surely you've read some of these books where they always say like your first 10 games are going to be terrible.
Oh yeah,
the first 10 games you make will be terrible. Like if you've ever read, well, I guess maybe that's not the case now, but back in the 90s, if you ever bought a book on game dev, that'd be like the first thing they'd say is your first 10 ideas are going to be awful. Once you kind of get some experience under your belt, that's when you'll learn. Like, yeah, but those next 10 ideas might not be so great either. But you can't let criticism be the driving force. Because geez, this has affected me this way, and I'm self-flagellating. I didn't even make the stupid games.
I think that's one of the lessons I've learned from being a streamer and a content creator is that I know that I'm not even okay. Like, I'll even frame it in the same way we just talked about. Like, my first 20 streams were not great. I'm willing to say that my first 50 streams were not that great, but
I got it on the 12th try. I'll just put it that way. I got it on the 12th try.
Got it on the 12th try. You nailed it.
Everyone after that's been terrible.
Yeah. But even looking at this, crossing the streams, done 50 of these. We're almost at 60 at this point. I can specifically say that my ability to drive the show needed a lot of improvement in the early days, and so there's always improvement to have now. But I think that's really, it comes down to me looking at it as holistically and realistically as possible, and focus on how can I make this better. And I'm not saying that's how we need to address necessarily games that are not great, or the creators who see those games and then say it's the death of XYZ. I think it's through that same lens that I approach any of that feedback. If someone's like, oh, this game sucks, or something is horrible about this game, or it signals the death of this genre or type of game, I look at it, I take it in, and then I look at the core of the message, and then I say, well, maybe there's some points here, but what are they driving at? What is the constructive piece here that will make this better? Whether it's the game or the feedback that was given about the game. And then I note that, and then I just kind of file it away until the next time something in that vein comes up. But I think that's the part of me that makes it, I have to do that because there's so much of it. So I see it, I acknowledge it, I try to note what could have been either better communicated by the creator or where the game could have gotten better. And then I kind of move on until it comes up again, only because I know that if I personally hear those messages and then kind of continue to think about it, it puts me in a space where I can't make my content at the level that I would like it to be at, in terms of not like just quality, but tone, right? And being able to project. I don't want to project those things forward, the negative things that I read and see.
And I think the other thing about that is you were talking about your content, and you've done 50 episodes and how you've improved, and where you maybe haven't. I think the key to that is the only way you're going to improve is to do it. You won't improve by not doing it.
Yep.
So I would rather be in a position to encourage people to continue doing. In everything, not just gaming, but everything.
Yeah, not just gaming. I honestly believe in even taking the gaming as an example. Like, if there are games that fall short, or there's a lot of things that could be fixed, and maybe this is the game dev in me speaking, but the most useful
both of us
thing,
have a little bit of that in us. So
right. The most useful thing that I could say if I were to stumble across one of these games and cover it, and then have to speak to it, I always come out and I approach it like a game dev, more specifically like a game designer, because that's my field of expertise. And I'll say, well, here's where they fell short. And then, I'm not trying to say this is how they should have done it, because I don't claim to be an expert. But in the context of my experience and own expertise, I say here's where I think it could have improved. Here's where I think, giving that positive, constructive feedback. So it's not just here's why it sucked, or not it sucked and let's move on. It's here's how it sucked. Here's how it sucked. Here's what I think could have been done better, not to prescribe or tell them how to do their jobs, but from a gamer's standpoint, here's what I think would be cool.
Yeah, and I think the worst thing you can do is to tell them like, oh, you should have just never released this. You should have just never done this. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes you fumble just so you can figure out how to pick the ball back up.
Yeah. I also feel like, and I'm really glad that we kind of gotten into this topic, because I feel like I've had these discussions with friends too while we play games who are not game devs. I take that time to educate a little bit, because there's often, again, back to Destiny 2, right? I'll sometimes hear someone be like, oh, Bungie effed this up again. And I'll be like, I'm like, did they though? Or did they just not have the time to address this? And this is on someone's task list right now. Right. Like there are aspects of game development that just your average gamer don't understand. Like, they don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, yes, maybe there are these bugs that made it through to this release, but I guarantee you they probably fixed so many other bugs that would have been way worse by the time it got to us. And so that was what was more important, because game dev is always prioritizing your work against the number of people and the time you have.
I was about to say that same thing, but the other side of that is you don't know who's actually doing that prioritizing either.
That's true.
Is it like, are you blaming the developer, or was there somebody up top that was, or somebody in like, I'm currently, like, I'm the system architect, and I have to, we have this thing that has to come out in 2 months, or I can have you focus entirely on this thing that is working, but maybe not working the way we want it to be working.
Yeah.
This other thing's this has got to get done. Like, we'll just have to improve that later, when we have more breathing room, and hope that nothing in this next 2 months that comes out will supersede that.
The funniest thing is when I hear someone say, oh, Bungie nerfed or disabled this, but they still didn't fix this thing. And I'm like, well, we just don't know, right? We don't know what drove that choice.
Yeah. Guess which one was easier to do?
Yeah. That's sometimes how I'll often respond is, it was probably a lot easier just to turn off this item,
right,
than to fix this other thing that's giving us grief right now.
That was something that was easy, that was done and tested within 2 hours. Whereas this other thing that you're having problems with, they probably looked at that and said, "Oh, there's some underlying system that this could be a 2-week sprint to fix that."
So when I hear feedback, or I hear content creators or just other gamers kind of rip apart something in a game or the development team, maybe because, and I admit I'm biased because I'm a game dev, I will almost always side on the game dev often and be like, look, man. Yeah, and there'll be times where I've been frustrated with things in games. I'm like, yeah, this sucks. But, I kind of shake it off and I'm like, it's how it goes. Like, this is busted. Maybe there is a reason why they couldn't get to this, or maybe there's a whole nother explanation as to why this is happening. And so I think I think for me, I try to tackle it or approach it with grace and say, you know what? Yeah, it sucks that this game was a total disappointment in these ways. But and maybe this is, again, me, comes down to my core personality. I try to find the things that I do appreciate about it. Or at the very least, now I know how things can go wrong in a game. And I know what to avoid. As both a game developer and a gamer. So
I know the things that people don't like now.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Because things that they liked 4 years ago may not fly anymore.
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about negative opinions of games, cynicism. What are games that you're enjoying right now? I already know them. Go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Diablo 4 is actually really good, man. It's so good.
My experience with Diablo 4 has not been great.
Oh no, what happened?
I let chat decide what I was going to play.
Oh, that's the problem.
They voted. Yep, they voted for voted even on Barbarian and Druid, and I flipped a coin and I got Druid. And having played Druid, I now understand why it my father's frustration as I would play my music in the car when I was driving, us someplace. I understand that frustration now. Like, this is not something. This is clearly something somebody else likes.
Someone else steered this. Yeah.
Like,
I like Druid, man. I'm enjoying Druid.
I know people that do. And it may be the build I was using. I admit that maybe I need to try a different build. I've tried a couple things and nothing's really clicked yet. But but that said, I did start playing a rogue off stream and freaking love rogue. It's my style. I like control and dots and that kind of, like, that's really been fun for me.
Yeah, rogue is a cool class. I've only been playing Druid, but I've been, watching people play on their streams or just catching videos of gameplay for other classes. And my impression is that Rogue is going to be super fun, but I think for those that are not familiar with Diablo, it's a bit of a learning curve for them.
Yeah.
But it's but if you're if you're familiar with Diablo and you jump in, Rogue is gonna feel real good.
Rogue, I have noticed that about that. Rogue, you really need to understand how to use the mobility of Rogue,
right?
To make good with it,
right?
I do want to try the Sorcerer at some point, but not there yet. Yeah. I've been playing that, and I started playing Street Fighter 6 thanks to Capcom. They gave me a copy of it, and I am not a fighting game guy. I am not good at them.
Man, they're so highly technical these days in terms of gameplay.
6 is such a different animal, though. It's one of my favorite games this year. One of my favorite games, easily. And what I like about it is, at any time I can say I'm done playing Street Fighter for a little bit, and then I can come back to it, like 2 days later, and man, I'm just having fun again. You know.
I need to still crack it open, sitting on my desk.
What's the stance on Shop Platinum stuff? The great thing about it is you never have to click that tab.
Yes.
Never got to click the tab.
Thank you so much.
If you want to vote with your wallet, just don't click the tab.
Exactly.
Nothing tells them I don't like this stuff like never engaging it.
Yeah. There's some strong opinions about it in my community. We had some conversation about it.
Look, I totally agree with those opinions. I don't like it either, but at the same time, again, the best thing you can do is not engage it.
Right.
Simply because, if you don't engage it, then it's that's the way that you communicate to them. I don't like this part. I like your game. And I want to play your game.
Yeah.
But I don't like this part.
Exactly. And honestly, exactly. And honestly, I have more understanding of it, in that the way games can monetize their players can get really bad. Absolutely. Gets really bad. I'm actually took a firm stance with my chat. I was like, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. And
I'm the same way with any game that has microtransactions. I'm just, if you put something in there that, that I'm like, I'll pay money for that.
Yeah.
Then guess what I'm going to do? I'll pay, I might pay money for that.
Yeah.
But the rest of, but if you just fill it up with crap that's like, there's no value in here for me, then then no, I won't engage it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I think, ultimately that was kind of my response was, doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, then don't, don't look at it. Don't engage with it. And honestly, my footnote to that is, the way that the shop works does not impact my ability to progress and play the game. So I'm cool with it. And honestly, I might get something that looks super cool because I'm willing to pay some money for something that looks super cool in a game. I'm that kind of person. If someone doesn't want to pay for that and it's not breaking like your core experience with the game.
Yeah. I think that's key. That's key. Yeah. Like if you release something that is like, this actually affects everybody else, I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, most games don't do that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know that I can. I don't know that I know enough about mobile games to. Let's just say we're excluding mobile games in this situation. Yeah, I don't think most games do that. And so, no, I mean, like, hey, man, if you really want those horns, and or that, the thigh high boots, enough to give them money. I mean, you're not really hurting me,
Yeah, it doesn't affect my experience.
I have a problem with that. I actually have a problem with that statement. Do you guys not have phones? And here's the problem that I have with that. Everybody jumped on that guy's butt.
I know, right?
Is this an April Fool's Day joke? Guy was lauded as a hero. Yet I have seen guys that were completely polite with devs and saying, I kind of disagree with you, get raked over the coals.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have it both ways. Like, I think that I do think that like it was a really crappy thing to say, but at the same time,
it was a crappy thing to say, but it's not something we should. It's been years, and I'm kind of over it, and I'm kind of like, I'm like, it doesn't. It's no longer relevant to this specific conversation about Diablo 4, in my opinion. I think it's people are just want to be angry about about the fact that that was a stupid thing to say. Meme. Yeah, it's a great meme. It's
a very good meme.
Right.
I mean, like, I'm in both cases, I'm not all that serious, but I do kind of notice the juxtaposition of the two different things. Like,
absolutely,
maybe we should just be nice to each other.
Absolutely. And and I guess that's my thing, right? Like, I'm glad to have conversation about these things in my own streams. I think it's good conversation to have. But then when it gets to the point of like, I still hate it, and I'm gonna hate it, I'm like, I'm not sure what you want me to say at this point. Like, I'm not sure what you want me to tell you. Like, do you want me to say you're right? I mean, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say I feel the way I do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we should move on and maybe enjoy the other things about the game that are happening. Or you can find someone else who's streaming it who does feel the same way you do about it.
And just, hey, man, no skin off my nose if that's where you want to go. I mean, like, this is the thing I want to project into the world. Feel free to go somewhere else if you want to get something else. I mean,
right.
I'm not your father.
I mean, this goes back to what I feel was like a really good point that was made, I think, Supercomputer in our Supercomputer episode. He said something to the tune of because this goes back to our like, how do we address the the cynicism, or how do we address a lot of the negative critique that we see in games or whatever, right, in our space. And Supercomputer said something that really stuck out to me is, I mean, we as streamers and content creators, we set the tone. We set the tone for the content. We set the tone for the community. And then should there be people in the community who really want to continue to push against that, there's nothing wrong with saying, this is not the place for you then. Or rather, continue to encourage the things that are core to your belief system as a streamer, and continue to encourage that, and kind of dissuade the things that are not in line with that. Not to say, hey, you're kicked or you're banned, but more like, hey, you don't have to be here if you don't if you don't agree, or you want to continue to argue about this point or counterpoint.
You don't have to be here. Why are you watching this? Well, okay. Well, I feel a lot better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel a little bit better knowing that, like, it's I'm not just in my own head, not so much that other people feel the same way, but when I get to get out of my head for a little bit, because like many people, I just sort of live in a room by myself, like a lot of times I just spend that time, in a space by myself. And so, like, I'm just kind of stuck here thinking, like, about the things that are happening, and thinking, like, well, maybe you're wrong. maybe you're just not seeing it right. So it's nice to kind of,
to be
socialize,
real,
I guess.
To be real with you, Benny, I never feel like your gut is wrong on these things, because you and I've had these conversations often about, am I off base on this, or am I reading this wrong? And usually my response is no, you're fine, dude. And I think that's what it is. Like, I think there's nothing wrong with checking yourself, but I also think that someone like you who's been around enough, I think your gut is often right. Like, your thought is often correct. I think the real question I would pose is, what can you do to believe in that more?
Well,
you know what I mean?
First, I want somebody to clip you saying that, so I can
play it back whenever you want.
Oh man, that's going to get me in trouble later. I'm not here for validation, for affirmation.
Absolutely. But, yeah, I know you're not.
But it does feel good to just kind of talk it out with somebody. And you're a great guy, because you'll say yes to everything I say. So that's good for me. Oh, yes, Benny, you're totally right.
Yes, Benny, you're totally right.
Thank you.
We'll just record that, and you can play that when you want. Put it on the soundboard.
Well, it's been a night, hasn't it?
It's been a night, man.
I don't know, how long do you normally go with crossing streams?
It totally varies. It could be an hour, could be 2. I've had 2.5 hours. I really have the policy.
You just couldn't shut up that night, huh?
I know, it was all me. I have the policy of, like, it goes as long as it needs to. Conversation goes where it needs to for as long as it needs to. And it's not steered me wrong. It's gone fine for me. I certainly it's always great when I get guests who want they want to do their due diligence, and they're like, what are all the questions you're gonna ask? And I'm always my response is, haha, no idea. But which then I've refined to, here's like 3 or 4 that I almost always ask, but it can go anywhere from there.
This is it's good to know that was my plan as well. So we're both on the same page.
Absolutely.
No idea. That was my plan.
Yeah, I have no clue. So when I hear people like say how wonderfully planned these are, or how how prepared I am. I mean, I prepare in other ways, depending on the guest. If it's someone that I don't know as well, I try to do my homework, right? Like, I get to poke around their channel or their VODs or their YouTube if they have one. But I don't like go through and say, here's all the questions I'm going to ask. Maybe the most I'll do is like It'll be a very short bulleted list of here's some things I want to know, but not the specific question.
Do that with my channel, because boy, you get a completely different guy. Completely different guy. Oh,
are you thinking about going to a TwitchCon in the future? I'm kind of curious.
I don't know. I have a family thing, a wedding this year.
Is it like within that window of time?
When is TwitchCon this year?
I'm embarrassed to say that I don't remember the specific.
I don't know because
where
it's going to be out of town for us, so it's going to be traveling. And
it's October. It's October.
Oh well, yeah, then it's going to be the same amount at the same time. So
yeah.
So I don't think it's going to happen this year. We haven't been since 2017.
Me too. Actually, no, I take that back. Mine was 2019. Last one was that.
Maybe I may have gone to 2019. No, we didn't go 2018 because that was when the storm hit. Or maybe we did go to 2018. You know what, man? I don't remember. I don't remember.
I'm trying to make the arrangements.
I think it had to be 2018. It was 2018. It had to be 2018, and then it had to have been before. Like that had to have happened before. The storm was October 10th of that year.
Oh, I see.
So it may have. If it was before then we went to that one. And that's the last one I've been to.
I'm trying to make plans for this year's. In that I submitted a panel and
I gave up on submitting panels, or even submitting to be a part of a panel. Like, they're not interested.
Man, I have bad news then because the panel I submitted was like, "What's it like to be BennyFits?" So,
oh wow,
guess that's gonna be unfortunate.
Yeah, the instant rejection. We definitely probably wouldn't have gone this year anyway because we still don't have a house. We're still working on it. It's of it. I can see it over there, but we've got so many other things to do before we can even move into it. So
wow,
yeah, it's been October 18th. Since October 18th, we've been without a house.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say I remember it being late last year, but
yeah.
Wow, that's
so it's been coming up on 9 months.
Yeah,
for us, and I can tell you that is not helpful on the old mental space. So when you come to think about things like are people being too cynical, you really start to like, well, man, what do you know, man? Like you're a guy like working out of a portable building in his neighbor's backyard. So what do you know,
man? Well,
like some of these guys got like giant studios. You don't know crap.
Man, I do wish for you, for that to all continue to resolve itself. I know it's a long process, but man,
I think we're on the cusp of being done with it.
That's good.
The next thing is just we got to furnish a house. So
yeah,
I just got to hope that streaming starts to make some money.
Yeah. Rumor Bard asks, what was your favorite convention or conventions?
BlizzCon 2009.
Yeah.
That was I think that was it. That was the one.
I could understand that that was a good time for Blizzard. Like that was a good. Yeah.
And me and my wife, we used to go every year.
Really?
Every year. But then I started streaming, and then we stopped doing it.
Which is kind of ironic, right? Because it's like it's a game, it's a industry thing.
That's when you really ought to go. But
that's when you should be going. How's streaming been for you? How's it been like? I know that you've been obviously you're so busy, but with everything going on,
this past month has been difficult because I had to take a week off to do some work on the house. where I was like, there were contractors here, and I just kind of needed to be ready for them.
Yeah.
And that just took up a lot of my time. And then the past week, pretty much, I've just been incredibly sick.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been able to stream. So May was just kind of a wash, which if you've ever streamed before, you know, if you ever take any time off, the next couple of weeks are going to be brutal because you've got to rebuild. Unless you just have a diehard audience, which very few people really have that. Yeah, it's just that's where I am right now. I'm hoping that maybe next week I can have a little more clear content plan and go with that, because I actually wasn't expecting Capcom to come through with Street Fighter 6, and let alone Street Fighter 6 early access.
That's awesome.
Because, you know, like I didn't think I was the guy, but apparently I was. So that's sort of like, well, this is what this is what you're doing this week, and you better grab a hold of it while you can. So
yeah,
I'm glad I did, because like I said, it's one of my favorite games this year.
That's awesome. I can't wait to dive into it. I can't wait to get in there. I
saw your copy.
Yeah,
I saw you post that on Twitter.
Yeah. I cannot wait. I'm gonna crack into it. It's always just been a whirlwind of things, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I have this I want to play still.
Whoops. You ever want to feel good? I'll play you. I'll play against you.
I don't know, man.
When you're done,
I don't know, man. You
should see my custom fighter. He's a shining example of what a fighter should be. Anybody who's seen my stream knows exactly what I mean.
Oh man, I'll have to peek at a VOD and see what you're talking about. Oh boy.
I will say that's my favorite part of the game. Actually,
it's a custom character.
Yeah, because there's a whole semi-open world story mode that goes along with your custom fighter.
I heard about that. Yeah,
man, it's like Street Fighter meets Yakuza.
Oh really?
It's so good. So good. Yes.
Oh man, yes. That sounds rad.
It's maybe good. Not as in depth as Yakuza. You know, like
I wouldn't expect it.
The crazy things, but
you're running around like a city space, wandering around, seeing what's going on.
Random encounters can happen.
Random stuff. That's cool.
And basically, there's most of the people you see, you can actually challenge them to a fight. You know, so like you just come across some girl in a some office lady in a power suit, and just like, hey, let's fight.
You can just fight.
Got it. Let's go.
Oh my god, they brought the street fight to Street Fighter. That's so good.
Yeah, literally.
That's so good. It was literally you could just walk down the street and fight someone.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's great.
And I found a guy that like a superhero that I think looks a lot like Bible Man. So that was he's a little too high level for me, so I haven't fought him yet. But
that's so good.
Enjoy that guy when you get there.
Benny, thank you for hanging out, dude. It's been a blast. It's always great catching up with you, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Give you the floor for any closing words you might have for those that are listening.
Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. That's it. I'm done. I'm not gonna do any more of that.